I believe when they were preparing the program that there was a typo, because I certainly am not going to give the feature address this morning. I certainly am going to just share with you some thought patterns. So I want to recognize Cleveland Thomas and David Rogerson from Insight Consulting, and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Telecommunications, Science and Technology, Ms. Joan Joseph, and to say a very warm welcome to everybody here this morning, especially those of you that are visiting for the first time. I have asked Cleveland to see if in the program there can be some space for some sightseeing and some leisure activities. I think it would be a little bit unfortunate if you came to Antigua and didn't get a chance to see why we welcome in excess of 1 million visitors a year here. Of course, you're staying on the scenic West Coast. The Jolly Beach here is a very majestic beach, and I am certain that after the hours indoors, you'll find some time to get out and enjoy the turquoise blue waters of the Caribbean Sea. Now, I want to thank the ITU for, obviously, and the Caribbean, the regional office of the ITU for considering Antigua as a venue for this workshop. When Cleveland asked if we would consider hosting this workshop, I immediately said to him, yes. And so welcome once again. I hope that your deliberations over the next couple of days will be very fruitful. And also to recognize that my experience with these workshops is that in addition to the formal presentations, the networking that takes place is very valuable, and so you'll get a chance to find out more about what's happening in some of the other countries. Now, your focus is on regulatory accounting and cost modeling in a broadband environment for national regulatory authorities and operators. And maybe against that backdrop, I will share with you just some very brief remarks and say to you that when we speak about broadband, I think we need to understand that the broadband economy really has to revolve around the next generation. And I heard Cleveland refer to the next generation networks. Well, while you and I may understand what we are referring to by NGNs, I want to submit to you this morning that the next generation is in fact here. And that, as I have said in previous fora, what you and I are going to discuss today and what you and I are going to discuss in the next year or two really redounds to a harvest among young people, especially those that are below the age of 20. And you might say, well, what are you talking about? There is no doubt that the internet and access to the super information highway has made the world not just a smaller place, but it has had irreversible and profound impact on societies. And you can look at what is happening beyond the Caribbean archipelago, but look at what has happened in the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, and ask yourself for a moment whether there isn't this unrelenting reliance on the internet for us to function on a daily basis, minute by minute, hour by hour. And if you have any doubt about that, ask the Caribbean Regional Office of the ITU to shut down the internet in any of these islands for an hour. And you will see the impact that it can have. So against that backdrop, I am saying that access to the internet is a fundamental right that all governments should consider. And as you know, I believe in the Nordic countries, they have already made access to the internet as a fundamental human right. But when we speak about access and the broadband economy, we need to be clear about who should be the player, or who should be the players in this broadband environment. And my submission to you is that the true benchmark would be whether working class people can afford access to technology. Because it isn't sufficient for governments to promulgate policy where only the elite can afford it. And the it I'm referring to is both the technology, meaning the device, and access to broadband. We all know of a plethora of reports, some of them very substantial, coming from the World Bank that links increase in internet penetration to GDP, growth in any economy. In addition, there is evidence that this growth is additive in rural areas. So we do not need to revisit those discussions. The discussions we need to focus on are how can we make broadband more affordable while at the same time recognizing that there is a cost to technology. Simultaneous with this forum this morning, just across the corridor, the ministers of education of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States are meeting. And there is an imperative both on the part of the education system and by extension the ministers of education, and an imperative on the part of ministers who are charged with the development of technology to ensure that that next generation that I'm referring to are in fact properly equipped and readied to participate in the broadband economy. Here in Antigua and Barbuda, in 2004, internet penetration was 7%. I am pleased to tell you that in 2013, it is in the vicinity of 85%. And I'm talking about internet penetration as an amalgam of what is found in homes and in businesses. Mobile penetration, obviously, in most of these islands, very high. In Antigua, it's approximately 126%. And so we have to look to focus as well on mobile broadband and what that can do for businesses and what that can do for consumers. This didn't happen because there was an ad hoc approach to deploying cutting-edge new technologies in Antigua and Barbuda. As a matter of fact, my travels within the Caribbean have revealed to me that most of the islands are making tremendous progress, but rural communities and disadvantaged people continue to suffer from access to the broadband and to be able to participate in the broadband economy. Access to fiber is a major issue. In 2005, we landed brand new submarine fiber optic cable system here, and that was the forerunner to the ubiquitous distribution of access to internet, especially in the education system. We were able to put mobile information technology classrooms in buses and move them from school to school. And I have invited Cleveland to extend an invitation perhaps on Thursday afternoon for you, the participants, to see what these buses have been doing. We certainly examined the area of what it will cost to ensure that people who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford access have been given access both to the gadgetry and to broadband. So we went about and we opened 32 community computer access centers, all with access to high-speed internet. We certainly gave every daycare center, the administrators of these centers, access to a notebook and specialized software that we had developed. And we were able to give every primary and secondary school teacher on an opt-in basis in all government-run schools and all private schools a laptop as well as access to affordable broadband. So simultaneous with the increase in the bandwidth that we had available for distribution island-wide was the deployment of hardware into mission-critical areas, especially those that were preparing our generation next. And as you know, generation next, as I said to you early on, is the generation of now. More recently, we commissioned a project with Digicel called the Government Assisted Technology Endeavor Gate, and we were able to deploy, as the only country in the English-speaking Caribbean, not just a 4G network, but a 4G long-term evolution, 4G LTE network, as well as 4G HSPA plus networks. Now, I want to conclude my very brief remarks by saying that there is an increasing concern about the cost of broadband in the region. And my submission is that when we speak of broadband, I think 2 megs is the minimum down. I don't think anything less than that is appropriate, because when you look at the University of YouTube, when you look at what people are trying to access online, we need to be able to afford this type of bandwidth. And I think that this workshop and your theme, so to speak, would be very useful in sending a signal both to regulators and to internet service providers that we need to keep a very keen eye on the cost of broadband. And unlike other countries which have a significantly more challenging geographic layout and a more challenging topography, most of these islands should be able to have access, and fairly free access. When I say free, I don't mean free of cost, but freely available access to broadband. And so it is no surprise then that in Antigua, we did not forget the island of Barbuda. Barbuda is one of the only countries with a very small population, 1,200 people, that have been enjoying the advantages of 4G LTE technology since last year, December. And so, if you come to this forum here, I see a 4G LTE device over there, and you cannot access the internet in real time from your desk and from your table, my submission to you is maybe we're not quite ready. And so I'm very happy to conclude my remarks and to say, welcome to Antigua. I hope that Cleveland and the ITU team here on the ground take up my invitation for you to visit the GATE training facility, where we will be able to explain to you a little bit more about what we are doing in terms of leveraging on technology to empower young people. And I wish you all a great conference. Thank you for listening to me. God bless you. Thank you very much.